Welcome. Let's discuss how Bruce Lee became the Dragon Warrior for equality. And we will reveal those 5 characteristics that made him the global icon we all celebrate today. As an American born, he still had to prove he was an American and good enough to reflect his true diversity. There are still many out there who are still resisting the change and sadly are living in the past. We at Multicultural only judge a person by their character, not by their race, colour or religion. And that seems to be the diet of some in the media.
Why? Why?
So what's multicultural, you may ask? Well, it's about living in our metropolitan cosmopolitan environment in harmony in the 21st century, which truly reflects our progressive lifestyle. Bruce Lee didn't have an easy life, as these articles clearly show. Let's also remember that many Asian Americans are still being subjected to hate crimes for no other reason than their Chinese heritage. As you already know, Bruce Lee had died on the 20th of July 1973 at only 32 years old. He is gone but not forgotten, and in celebration of his life, we had invited his daughter Shannon Lee to London to receive the Bruce Lee Legend Award. So before we delve into Bruce Lee's 5 successful characteristics, let's hear from Shannon.
It is such a sincere honor to be here tonight to accept this award on behalf of my father. I express my deepest thanks to Emma, to Bobby for being my host, and for recognizing Bruce Lee. Sometimes in our personal day-to-day struggles, we may think, what difference can one person make? Let me tell you what it is, because in my life, I have been told it many times by people all over the world who are fans of Bruce Lee. The difference one person can make is the difference he can make to one other person, and then one other, and then one other. It's the inspiration, the spark, the light to move just one person, and where there is light, there is no darkness.
Number 1, perseverance. Jun-Fan, commonly known as Bruce Lee, was born on the 27th of November 1940 in Chinatown, San Francisco, and was the 3rd of 4 siblings. Lee was born in both the hour and the year of the dragon, which according to tradition represents strength, confidence, and power amongst other traits. Chinese migration to California goes back to the 1800s, when the first Chinese migrants helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. In 1941, the family moved back to Hong Kong, fearing America's recent involvement in the Second World War. The growing racism towards the American-Japanese community spilled over to the Chinese community, as the Europeans could be bothered to tell the difference whilst fueled with hate. The incarceration of American-Japanese community was shocking, as it revealed a deep sense of hate towards one ethnicity, regardless of a person's character. This wasn't the case towards Americans who had Italian or German ancestry. This showed perseverance from his family, and his father helped shape Bruce's fascination for films from a young age, as he would bring young Bruce onto sets with him whilst he was working. Number 2, hard work. In 1950, at the age of 9, Bruce starred alongside his father in The Kid, a Hong Kong drama film based on the comic book character of the same name. By the age of 18, he was starring in 20 films and began defining fundamental characteristics to his performance that would later display his most celebrated works. During his teenage years, he started getting involved in several street fights, and his parents decided that he needed to be trained in martial arts. Initially, he was rejected because he was 1/4 German from his mother's side, and there was a long-standing rule in the Chinese martial arts world that you do not teach a foreigner. Eventually, he was accepted into the school and was taught by the Grandmaster Ip Man. But after a year into his training, most of the other students had refused to train with Bruce after discovering his mixed ancestry. He moved to San Francisco, then to Seattle, where he completed his high school education. During this time, he continued to practice martial arts, developing his various talents, and even started teaching his friends. Number 3, discipline. In 1961, he enrolled at the University of Washington, where he studied dramatic arts, philosophy, and psychology. 2 years later, he opened his first martial arts school in Seattle, where he would also meet his wife-to-be, Linda Emery. They would go on to have 2 children, Brandon and Shannon Lee. He eventually dropped out of college in 1964 and moved to Oakland, where he opened his second school. His multi-ethnic stance on teaching sparked controversy in the Chinese community, and Bruce was challenged by Tai Chi master Wong Jackman to a fight over this, winning against him in under 3 minutes. Bruce's example of inclusion to all was beautifully put by his daughter, Shannon Lee, at the Emmys.
In 1965, my father was challenged to a fight by local Chinese martial arts masters in Oakland, California, over his shameless practice of teaching martial arts to anyone, regardless of race, gender, or background. Chinese did not teach non-Chinese their martial ways, and so he was challenged. I'm happy to say he won the fight in under 3 minutes, which very much disappointed him, by the way. But more importantly, he won the right to be free of limited thinking and practice.
In 1964, he appeared in the Long Beach International Karate Championship, where he was noticed by TV producer William Dozier, who approached Bruce to play the role in the up-and-coming show, The Green Hornet. Around this time, Bruce became interested in developing a new style of martial arts that blended both East and West techniques, creating Jeet Kune Do. He started to use different methods of training, such as weight training for strength, running for endurance, fencing, and basic boxing techniques. However, The Green Hornet was cancelled after 1 season, and Bruce found himself without work. There were in fact racial barriers that prevented him from crossing into the establishment. Number 4, positive mindset. In 1970, he continued his career teaching martial arts to Hollywood A-listers like Steve McQueen and James Coburn, where he developed a likable reputation. Bruce developed and pitched a script for what would become Kung Fu, which Warner Brothers expressed interest in and began creating. However, as well as not being cast, his efforts were also not credited, likely due to his ethnicity and concerns regarding the public response. The lead character was a European, namely David Carradine. Bruce returned to Hong Kong, unaware that The Green Hornet had been played to success in Hong Kong and was unofficially referred as The Kato Show. He was surprised to be recognized as the star of the show. He signed with Hong Kong-based film company Golden Harvest and starred in the first leading role in The Big Boss, which was a huge commercial success and catapulted him into stardom. This was followed by another huge success with Fist of Fury in 1972, which broke the box office record set previously by The Big Boss. He was finally a star in his own right. In 1972, he set another milestone by starring, writing, directing, and choreographing Way of the Dragon. Once again, it broke Asian box office records. The film featured a legendary showdown between Bruce and Chuck Norris, who he had met in 1964 Karate Championship, and has been praised as one of the best fight scenes in film history. Number 5, belief. He began working on some fight scenes for his next film, Game of Death, when he was contacted by Warner Brothers to appear in their up-and-coming American-made martial arts blockbuster, Enter the Dragon, finally having been recognized internationally for his efforts and hard work. He jumped at the opportunity. Enter the Dragon was met with international acclaim. Bruce was now regarded as the world's leading practitioner of martial arts, both on and off screen. The film is widely regarded as one of the best martial arts films of all time. Enter the Dragon would go on to become one of the year's highest grossing films, earning an estimated $350 million worldwide and sparking global interest in martial art movies. There were even a popular song called Everyone is Kung Fu Fighting, making this a new cultural phenomenon created by Bruce Lee around the world. Bruce's style of mixed martial arts that integrated Eastern techniques in Western-made films informed works of up-and-coming actors like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal, which continued Bruce's martial arts legacy throughout the 80s and the 90s. Many artists, musicians, and actors have cited Bruce Lee's discipline to have inspired them, including Jackie Chan, the creators of Japanese mega franchise Fist of the North Star and Dragon Ball, have also discussed their inspiration for Bruce Lee's films. In summary, this is why Bruce Lee had famously stated to be like water. He had not only faced racism from Europeans, but also amongst some Chinese, as he was from mixed heritage and believed in social inclusion as he taught his martial arts, regardless of anyone's race, color or religion, making him our multicultural champion and a true Mr. Multicultural. It was his movies that made Kung Fu the global phenomenon that it is today. So we have not only to thank him for those great films, but also his fight against racism wherever it comes from. The world had embraced its first Chinese-looking superhero who didn't come from some white heritage background and made martial arts the fashionable art that we now know today. Why don't you leave us a comment and share your own thoughts on Bruce Lee's life? And how do you define being multicultural? Have we really moved on as a society since the 1970s? And has overt racism been replaced by covert racism? Give us your thoughts on this question. Would really appreciate a like or even a subscribe, and if possible donate on Patreon however little the amount to support this channel's ongoing mission to undertake multicultural campaigns. And remember, it's what's inside that counts, a motto we have used at the Emmas. Until next time, stay safe and let's keep it multicultural.